mean, it's just the redness itself that she's missing out. Yeah? And you're right when you say this kind of understanding of how cell firings in the brain might stack together, how there might be places where whole bunches of cell assemblies feed into, where information from different areas is coordinated. Maybe that's the brain basis of consciousness. Yeah, we don't know very much about that, and brain functioning is very, very complex, right? But the puzzling thing about this case is, suppose I said, well, there's not just one slide here, of course. The brain, maybe you need 3 or 4 slides. Maybe you need a dozen. Maybe I need 1 trillion, actually, to give you the whole story, right? But how could 1 trillion slides with a stack of information like that ever add up to getting the simplicity, giving you that knowledge of the simple thing, what redness is? You see what I mean? It's difficult to show that what you're saying is wrong, because really we don't know, right? You know, you put enough information to some person, and who knows what's going to go on. But it's hard to see how it would work. And of course, there's something irrelevant that might happen. It might be that if you gave a human enough information, they would die, right? Or I mean, we've all been there, right? Or it might be that if you give a human enough information, then they start to see spots, or they start to see red things. You see what I mean? That could happen, and that would be a kind of irrelevant. I mean, it's not really the physical information itself that's happening there. That's generating something else. That would make it a bit more like the last question, where you just did something weird to your brain, and now you get all these red spots. You see what I mean? You say, now you know what redness is. That's not what you want to be happening. What you want to be happening is just from a whole stack of information like that, Mary can rationally derive what redness is. Because if it's there in the information, yeah, she should be able to derive it. That's what seems kind of thought-stopping. Yeah. But as I say, it's hard to show definitively that what you're saying is wrong. Yep. Yep.
So if you're trying to get from like a complete, purely physical, say maybe mathematical set of information about the world or about the
yes,
information,
right.
and get somehow from that to this sort of subjective understanding of what red is.
Yes, that's right.
Isn't that like precisely what the universe as a giant computer is doing with physics? Because presumably we have an experience of red in our brain that's made out of physical matter, and so all that calculation, even if it's too much calculation for a human brain to perform,
right,
it's presumably done by a giant computer made out of the universe, right?
Yeah, that is, I think, kind of picking up. You're adding the giant computer into the last question, right? Maybe we can't do the derivation, but maybe the giant computer can. Yeah. The trouble is to see how it could possibly work. I mean, how could any amount of complexity give you the simplicity of what redness is? I mean, it's not that this is something very difficult. It's not that I'm showing you some fancy maths here, yeah, where you say, well, by God, if only I'd worked a bit harder in high school, I could be doing that. You know, you just look and there it is. Yeah. Now, how could that be something that you derive from some complex maths?
I mean,
yep.
couldn't it be the case that it just seems very simple to us because we have this perspective that's built out of consciousness and built out of these things that, like, if your consciousness is built out of these incredibly complex things that then form the tiny building blocks of your consciousness, then those tiny building blocks, despite the fact that they're physically immensely complicated, would seem very simple to you because you have this perspective that's built out of these, right? So
yeah.
This experience of red seems like the most simple thing in the world to us, but only because it's built on this enormous framework that builds our incredibly complex consciousness. I mean, isn't it a little circular to say that because we are conscious and our consciousness seems simple, that it can't be made out of complicated things that make our clearly complicated consciousness?
Yeah, that is very interesting. The whole question of complexity and simplicity, and this is just, I think, picking up the last question. Yeah. The whole question about how simplicity and complexity fit together is really interesting when you're thinking about the brain and consciousness at all, because we all take it for granted that whether an animal's conscious is going to need a complicated brain. Yeah, animals just do need surely that's right. You know, some animals, like sea slugs maybe, have got such simple brains that we say, well, that thing's not conscious. But bacterium, right, that can't be conscious. It's not complicated enough. Whereas with humans, you say, yeah, okay, we can do it. Octopuses presumably can do it. Good, big, complicated brains. But at the same time, the output, the outcome, is something very simple. Yeah, and that's really another way of putting the fundamental problem anyway. If this somehow was revealed as complex, you just had destroyed the perception of colour here. What you had wouldn't be perception of colour. So the puzzle is, how can something so simple be being generated have all this complexity required for it? We really seem to be dealing with things that are just incommensurable. You see what I mean? Because it's not as if the colour here can be defined in physical terms. The colour experience can't be defined physically. We're not getting an experience of something very complex here. How can that simple thing, that simple, indefinable thing, be something that requires great complexity for its generation? That is really another way of stating the basic puzzle. Yeah. But that's an important line of thought. Yeah. To have that other way of framing it. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we should pack up. No. Okay, what I want to do next is something very simple and just go back slowly over what Mary's getting here, what the story is about what Mary isn't getting. First of all, I mean, I said this argument is childishly simple. I mean, you're all quite confident that you've got the argument. Whether you agree or not, you see how the argument goes there. So let's just freeze frame it and go over that bit about what Mary gets when she steps out of her black and white room. There's that moment of revelation. So what happened then when Mary stepped out? Well, first off, it's got something to do with what Mary's attending to. For most of us, colour just hits you in the face. Colour is very, very salient. And I chose these photos that I was showing because colour is very vibrant in them. It's the first thing you see, the first thing you notice. But I think for humans generally, being able to attend to colour is something you should think of as hard won. What I mean is, consider this. I mean, can you see? Is this showing? This picture, there's a 5 there against a red background. Yeah. I mean, statistically, there are bound to be half a dozen people in the class who don't see anything there except a bunch of dots, right? But this is part of a standard colour vision test. And the point is that the point about this kind of thing is you can't see the 5 at all unless you're having experience of colour. So if you show this to a child and the child says, yeah, I can see a 5, you know they're having colour experience. But children seem able to use colour to spot targets long before they're able to attend to colours. Children have a lot of trouble learning to attend to colours. It's very hard for children to learn a colour vocabulary. You can take a child of 2 that has hundreds of words in its vocabulary and show her a red one and show her a green one and say that one's red and that one's green and that one's red and that one's green. You can do that 700 or 800 times and they don't get it. They don't get what aspect of the object you're trying to point out to them. Colours are difficult for children. I mean, for children round here, they tend to live in such highly colour-coded environments that they smarten up, they get onto colour pretty quickly. Around 1900, children were about 6 to 8 years old before they were getting the first half dozen basic colour words. Darwin thought that his children were colourblind because he was doing that thing, this is red and that one's green and this one's red and that one's green, and they just couldn't get it. And he thought, you've got something wrong with your colour vision. They didn't, they were fine, they were perfectly regular children. But it's hard to attend to colours. We find it easy, but getting it in the first instance is hard. But if you're a child that maybe can't say what the colour of the 5 is, or can't say what the colour of the background is, still, if you can see the 5, then you are getting colour experience. You see what I mean? And presumably it's like that for animals. A tiger out hunting is using its colour vision to separate its prey from its background. Right? If you are a hungry tiger, that's the whole point of having colour vision. You can spot your targets. That's why evolution gave you colour vision, so you can spot your targets. Do tigers care about the colours of things? Do tigers say, what a beautiful green? Or look, what a sumptuous red? No, tigers do not do that stuff. Tigers don't care about colour at all. They only care about dinner, right? They care about their targets. They don't care about the colour in itself. The colour is instrumental for getting onto the target. So you can see colours without noticing them. You could have colour experience without noticing the colours themselves. The great neurophysiologist Luria was in Uzbekistan once in a rural area, and he said he was talking to a peasant farmer who said to him, us Uzbeks don't know the colours of things, and so we call everything blue. And he wasn't saying we Uzbeks are colour blind. That's not the point. It's that getting the colour words, noticing the colours, is hard. The ancient Greeks didn't use colour words like us at all, and arguably they hadn't separated out colour as a different dimension of experience. But all these people were still having colour experience. So colour can be making a difference to your visual experience even if you don't attend to it. So suppose Mary's like that. Suppose Mary just doesn't really attend to colours. She finds colours hard to notice. And then she steps out of her black and white room. It might be that all that happens is she can now spot objects against their backgrounds much better than she did before. Her vision has kind of crispened up in a way that she finds quite hard to define. Why am I seeing objects so much more richly and in a more detailed way than I did before? Well, I don't know. But something new has happened. If it was like that, if she didn't attend to the colours, she wouldn't get any knowledge of colours from her new experiences. You can get knowledge from experience only if you're attending in the right kind of way. Or suppose, this is, if you've ever known great scientists, this is not entirely unfamiliar. Suppose that Mary is not that interested in minds. Suppose she's a brilliant scientist. Maybe she publishes research papers from her black and white room. But she's just not very interested in her own mind. She's not very interested in the minds of other people. Then, when she steps out from her black and white room, she's not going to notice that something different is going on in her own mind. But suppose she does attend to the colours of physical objects. So she's not thinking, hey, this is what's going on in my mind. She's thinking, this is what's going on out there. Could she still learn something? Put up your hand if you think the answer is yes. She would still learn something. And if you think the answer is no,